I've been thinking lately about, about grief, which I know sounds weird, but in midlife, there are so many things that are ending or never got a beginning. The things we're wrestling with a lot of times have to do with loss, have to do with like what we didn't get to do, what we're not going to get to do anymore. Because, as we age, those opportunities change. There are new things. There are people we haven't loved yet and things we want to do that we've never even entertained yet that are also coming our way. But loss is a big part of midlife. And I don't think it's getting talked about enough. I really don't. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about how Dr. Natalie frames this, thinks about this, and what she wants you to be doing as a woman in midlife to have that centered midlife thriving, then keep listening today.
Welcome. You're listening to the Centered Midlife, a podcast that teaches women in midlife to unapologetically stop silencing their dreams and start designing the lives they want to live in. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie, and as a clinical psychologist of the last 2 decades and a twice divorced single mother myself, I not only know how hard it can feel heading into midlife, I am living it right here with you. I've taken all the many failed attempts and lessons learned in my own life and combine it with my extensive clinical experience to give you the tools you need to make midlife the best time in your life. No joke. So let's get started.
Welcome back to A Centered Midlife. So we're going to talk grief. We're going to talk loss. And I know that sounds really weird, but it is what it is. So here we are. I don't think that we are talking about it enough. And I want to bring some examples of it in my own life. Maybe that will, help you kind of frame what I'm talking about here. But there's so much that's been programmed into us about what a good life looks like. And we followed like good little girls, honestly, early in our life into these patterns because this is what we thought we needed to do. So, what kind of job we needed to have, what kind of relationships we needed to have, whether or not we were going to parent or not parent, all of those things kind of were prescribed for us. And of course we chose them too, but they were programmed there. It was a choice that was it was an option that became almost undeniable at some point, right? So for me, that was marriage and kids. And I would say in midlife, what I've really started to recognize is I don't know that marriage was for me. I don't know that partnering was for me. The verdict could still be out on that, but I just it wasn't something that I stepped into with joy. Parenting, on the other hand, is definitely something that I've stepped into with joy. And I think anybody on the podcast here who is watching in midlife their children age and become young adults is starting to wrestle with the loss that comes with watching this human who you have been 100% responsible for up until this point move out and start their own lives, right? You're like, oh my gosh. And I think, from a coaching and clinical perspective, what I've helped most women during this transition stage deal with is, and men, because I have male clients too, how do you move from being that, what we call a transactional parent to a relational parent? Transactional parenting is a lot about I do for you. And relational parenting is just that. I have a relationship with you and I can be here and be your biggest fan and love you and love everything about you. But it is not my responsibility to do for you because you're a grown-ass person now. And I've given you the tools I can give you, but I need you to move from this point forward, right? I've helped a lot of people to try and straddle that because it's hard. You're creating the checklists as they go to the dorm. You're creating the, you're calling in and checking in. Are you alive? Have you eaten? What are you doing? When they're off at college or in their first apartments by themselves. And that's transactional, my friends. And you probably aren't getting a great reception from your children about that. So, that's an example of how that goes. And I think, last podcast, I talked about the grief that I experienced when my son moved out in his freshman year of high school to live with his dad full time. I think that I had a little bit different experience with it earlier than some of my friends who had, kids in high school at the same time as my son, because I was already kind of wrestling with how do you become the relational and not the transactional parent when I'm not the one that's responsible to pick you up and drop you off and, make sure you have food in the house and clothes on your body. And like, what does it look like for me to be your biggest fan? What does it look like for me to have a relationship with you based on just how I relate to you? And early on, man, there was a lot of fits and starts for my son and I, for sure. I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but one of the most horrifying parenting moments of my life, I had I'm a online professor, have been for, since almost 10 years. So since 2017, it's different universities for clinical psychologists in training of, master's level and PhD level. And I had just gone on what we call residency. So you go meet your students in person for a week during their quarter, because they're the boards that allow for students to do their training in an online university setting. So it's probably most likely not APA accredited. There's one university that does a lot of online that is Fielding University, but the rest of the online universities, no. So in order to meet criteria for the boards in the states that do have a pathway for licensure for doctoral level psychologists, you have to meet in person so many hours. We call them residency hours. So I had just finished a residency. I was, I think, in Orlando for like a week teaching. And it's always like it's like a time warp, peeps. You're in this tunnel for that week, even as the teacher, where you eat, sleep, and drink all it is the education. You're up in the morning teaching these folks till the evenings. Oftentimes there's evening events that you're also doing, either with the other faculty or sometimes it's teaching itself. So like your days are long, long days. And I'm older. And even, when my son was in high school, I was in my mid 40s. Like I'm tired at the end of that day. So I had just finished up one of those, and I got home and started working, because this is how stupid I was during those times. It's like you work a 7-day work week. So there's like 2 weekends in the month back to back that you don't get. Essentially, you're packing, then you're teaching through that weekend, and then you hit the ground running, working whatever you do for work, because you took a week off of your other job in order to do this. And that's how I would do it. Like I would just come home, and then I would be seeing clients, and often I had doubled up on that week, because anybody I was seeing every other week, like I had finagled it so they were all going to be seen the week I got home. Holy smokes, right? So I got in and worked, and texted him right before the weekend after and said, "Hey, Saturday morning, would you like to go out?" "Sure, Mom, let's do it." So I picked him up, and we went out to eat for breakfast. And I was talking about how things were going and whatever. And he just was looking at me kind of odd across the table. We were at a Perkins. He's like, "Mom, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm just fine. What's going on, dude?" And he's like, "You haven't texted or talked to me in 2 weeks." What? Like, what? How did this happen? Like, I was mortified. It is the most horrifying mistake of my parenting life. This kid was 15. He was 15. And I hadn't even talked to him in 2 weeks. Now, in my defense, and I think this is where I've talked about this on the podcast before, I think I was still in that overworking to numb myself out phase after my divorce from my daughter's father, and allowed the numbness to also numb me away from the pain of, I don't get to have you live in my house, my son. Like, you're living somewhere else. And so I was still adjusting, and there was a lot of grief there that I was not addressing. And it is an inconvenient truth that emotions need to be felt. This is what any mental health professional will tell you. Emotions need to be felt. And if they're not, they will wait. They will build, but they will not be denied. So you can use all of your favorite defense mechanisms, but they will hit you like a ton of bricks at some point. They just will. And grief is like this. Grief accumulates, right? When I've done grief work with folks, first of all, there's no way to grieve wrong. Loss is experienced different for all people. But any of your losses that you haven't metabolized yet, like, if you haven't, it just becomes like this big ball of grief that needs to be addressed. And it'll hit you like a ton of bricks when your defenses are down. And my defenses were down. I was vulnerable. I was sitting across from him. I was trying to have a connection moment. I was trying to navigate this transition from transactional to relational parent. And I was hit with something that I had done to him that was harmful, right? Like, I mean, he took it like a champ. He said it lovely. He was really kind. Mom, is there something wrong? Like thinking that something was happening. Kind of, not one of the best traits that I've taught him is to kind of take it on yourself. Like, oh, I must have done something wrong that my mom is not talking to me. No, that was all on me, dude. Oh my God. And so it really hit me. I need to grieve. That I'm not going to be the mom that he lives with during high school. And I better just do it. Because if I don't, it's going to eat at me. It's going to accumulate. It's not going away. I have to grieve the transactional motherhood that I had with him up until this point. That the way I was checking in and getting my gold stars is, did I feed him well enough? Did I get him to all his games? Did I, was I the cool mom that let him, have time with his friends? I was checking off that list and feeling good about myself because I was doing it transactionally well. But he didn't need a transactional parent for me. He had that at home with his dad and his stepmother. He needed a relational parent for me. And I had no flippin' clue what I was doing. And I'm sure that you are finding yourself in similar circumstances if you're a parent, right? Like, how in the heck do we do this? What is checking in? What is texting? What is calling? What is doing things with people? What is quality time? But what is the quantity that I need to be, interjecting myself that allows for that quality time? And it's been a journey for he and I, but he and I have found a rhythm. My little family of him and my daughter and I have found a rhythm that is just beautiful. He shows up most Sundays for dinner, after he's done his whole weekend and gone to the gym. I mean, it's usually a later dinner, which was a little awkward when my daughter was younger and she needed to be to bed by 8:00, but it still works. We usually watch some sort of stupid show, or we're talking about things. Lately, he got really into finance and stocks, and I've never, but I've always kind of wanted to know about it. And so lately, some of our Sunday evenings, my daughter's like rolling her eyes, walking upstairs because we're talking about stocks and equities and, what we should be buying in and what we should be selling and all of those things. It's lovely, friends. It's like having I wouldn't say a best friend because I'm still his mom, right? Like, I'm still the person that his car got towed a couple weekends ago. Oh my God. He was at his girlfriend's house and he had the pass in the wrong place, the parking pass in the wrong place. And so the tow company took it, and he, calls me up, and of course where is my title? What do I do? How do I do this? So I had to kind of help him and not bail him out financially, but bail him out by knowing where all of those documents are and how to find them and take care of them. So sometimes I get a little transactional action that makes me feel better. But for the most part, this is a relational relationship. And it's beautiful and it's blooming. And I didn't know what I didn't know. He didn't know what he didn't know. Like, how would this look? But folks, if I hadn't just let myself feel sad, like I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have been able to grow into the next thing, right? You have to close the bones. There's a South American kind of, I'm not sure which cultures, but it's a ritual some of your woo-woo friends may know about called closing the bones. And it usually would happen after a woman would deliver a baby. You'd literally wrap her up and kind of jiggle her around and get her, close her bones, like bring her back together. But it really, from a nervous system regulating perspective, what it was doing was like, this part of carrying a child is done and the transition is now over here. And it's really about transitions. It's about not grief, loss, like ending, but transition. It's an alchemizing, right? It's like taking the parts of your life where you were this transactional parent and moving it over to being this relational parent. And I cannot tell you how much I love this human. He is amazing. In this relationship, while he's not my best friend, just feels like such a significant part of my life. And you don't lose, like, these are the two humans, my daughter and son. These are the two humans that I truly, altruistically, I just want them to have the best. I just do. But I'm stepping back in his life and I see my being in the way when I try to transactionally give him any kind of feedback. Like, I am here as a resource if he wants it, and he knows and has accessed it. But I will not offer my opinion. I will only offer my love. I will only offer my support unless he asks for something else. Like, I just had my car towed. What the hell? Where's my title and where's my proof of insurance? Like, then I can jump into the action, but I don't need to up until that point. And it is like, it's such a cherished thing, but I don't think we're talking enough about what do you need to do to grieve? What do you need to do to get through the loss piece of that? Because you have to, my friends. You cannot ignore that, right? Here's another example of loss in midlife. I am stepping into it, guys. I am, and I hope you are too. This centered midlife thing is my favorite. This is going to truly be my favorite phase in my life. And I say that, and I had kids and marriages and great jobs and lots of things that happened in my adulthood earlier in my life. But I can just tell the way I'm owning this and my choices and fiercely protecting what I want and, only allowing for what I want to be in my life. And when there's those inconveniences, uncomfortablenesses of what I have to deal with, I deal with it, but I keep moving forward. Like, I can't tell you how excited I am to just keep living in this phase. And I had to close my bones. I had to grieve and move around that. I had some bad codependent behaviors that were culturally driven, that were family driven. I wanted to reduce the conflict in everybody's life. I went into a job. Literally, I became a psychologist so I could do that for other people. Like, I don't want you to feel pain. Let's teach you how to not feel pain. And what I've recognized is that would be a disservice. I don't want to take your experiences away from you. I want you to learn how to breathe through them, how to live in them, because nothing is permanent. Even the negative stuff leaves. Even the positive stuff leaves. Like, it doesn't stay. But the next thing could be just lovely, right? We haven't met all the people that we are going to love, and we haven't met all the things that we're going to do. We've got life ahead of us. We got lots of road ahead of us. And if we're, muddled down by the past or avoiding that loss and avoiding those negative feelings of, I don't want to say goodbye to being a parent, this is going to be a problem. And I would say women in midlife that are stepping into it this way, and I would invite you to step into it this way, they're healing. They're healing some of these negative things. So for me, it was that codependent nature that I had just been hook, line, and sinker into, right? Like, it was my job to make sure that nobody felt any discomfort. It was my job, and my family trauma growing up in an alcoholic family household made it feel like life or death when I didn't do it right. Like truly uncomfortable for me. So I would keep friends that were not good for me all through my life. You know, I could contain them and let them have the version of me that they needed and nothing more, nothing less. But that came at a cost to me. You know, when it was friends that were very needy and needed, you know, me to be giving to them and fixing their problems and available to them anytime they needed me, you know, to do that, or to commiserate, or to, you know, they wanted me to side with them. They wanted me to see it their perspective. I did it. I did all those things codependently. I did all of those things. I learned how to dance around those eggshells and not have them crackle. And I was super good at it, but it came at the cost of my own energy and my own life. So one of the losses that I have seen as I've stepped into this new part of my life where I have a centered midlife is friendships that have just atrophied. You know, I can think of two off the top of my head that have really diminished. It's not that I don't say hello to these people if I see them, or even reach out from time to time, but not very often, because there is no value in those relationships for me. They were a one-way street. And I don't know that those people know that, because they're not healing. They have not chosen to step into their section of this life in a way that, you know, owns their own agency and allows for them to, you know, see when they are a part of their own suffering. They don't want to see it. They want to believe that it's all of the circumstances around them. They want me to validate that for them. And that was one of the chief operation, you know, things that I was doing in that friendship was validating that experience for them. And I just don't give my energy away to that anymore. I fiercely protect this energy because it's a finite resource. There's not much left of it, and I'm not going to just give it away. Right. So I've lost, you know, some of the daily check-ins and friendships. You know, these two, I talk to these people on the regular, but I can tell you with one of them in particular, I was feeling exhausted just when I thought about the person, not even thinking about the specific interaction I was going to have with them next, but just when I thought about the person. And I danced, I tried. I would meet with them, and try to create these experiences like going out and, you know, having a girls' night and making it something else. But it just morphed right back because they needed that. It morphed right back in that, you know, place where they needed me to reduce the conflict of their life in whatever way that was. And so I just let those relationships atrophy. And it's like I felt enormous guilt about this. Like, I'm not calling them. I'm not, oh my God, they've reached out to me again. They want to go out to coffee. I don't want to go to coffee. I don't want to go to dinner. I don't want to see you, actually. And I don't mean you harm in any way, but I don't want the relationship that you and I had. I don't, because it wasn't doing anything for me. It was a one-way street. But I feel enormous guilt, and that pang of like fight or flight, I'm going to die, I'm doing the wrong thing, shows up. And the scripts of how could I do this in a way that reduces conflict for that person, but doesn't harm me too much, I can handle it. Those scripts start going in my head, and I have to take care of the parts of me that want to tell me how to do this codependently rather than codependently doing the thing and moving on. It is not a net neutral when I go out and do the old codependent thing for those relationships. It's a net negative for me, for sure. And honestly, for them too. I know that as a psychologist, it doesn't help them if I participate in a pattern that's unhealthy. It doesn't. But it's hard to say goodbye to those relationships, right? So sometimes our grief and our losses are things like what happened with my son, where I say goodbye to the kind of mothering that I was doing. And I don't get to have the gold stars anymore in a transactional relationship, but I still get to have a relationship. So there's something to look forward to. And sometimes it really is just an ending. You know, I got healthy. I'm taking care of me, I'm stepping into this life in a centered way. They aren't. They chose not. And that's okay. That's their choice. And I feel pangs of guilt, and I have scripts telling me how I could fix this codependently. And I have to nurture myself through that and say, but Natalie, we're not going to do that anymore. And the hard thing is you're not going to respond, or you're going to say no to that invitation, and it's going to feel icky, and I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you through, because I know those are the healthy decisions to make and not the unhealthy. Oops, just hit my mic. Not the unhealthy mistakes to be making. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to choose this. I'm going to choose me. And you're going to hear me saying this over and over on the podcast, ladies, because we've got to get to this point. If you have trouble navigating the guilt, navigating the internal scripts that are happening, maybe even you have an internal mean girl that afterwards starts to whoop your ass because you decided not to go and take care of those old relationships that are not working for you, I strongly encourage you to reach out to somebody like myself and get some help. Get some counseling, get some coaching on that. If you live in Minnesota, I have a very small caseload, but I do still see women in midlife. It's my favorite thing to do to help you navigate these transitions and close those bones. You have to do this. You have to grieve. You have to feel the negative. It will not last. It is not permanent. And on the other side is just such wonderful things that you don't even know are coming your way, so that you can live that centered midlife.
Because I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, I have to make sure at the end of each of these episodes that I give you the disclaimer that none of the material that I talk about in these podcasts is meant to replace any kind of therapy or formal medical or mental health treatment. And in fact, anything that I offer on my website, my coaching programs, any kind of psychoeducational materials that I release are not a replacement for that level of care. So just take that into account when you listen. This is information for you, and hopefully you find it of value, both as an educational tool and for your entertainment. And I also want to mention that if anyone you know is in a mental health crisis, needs additional help, I always include these two crisis resources. They're available to anybody.
Pick up the phone and dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
And you can always visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Additionally, there's actually a crisis text line. So if you're not somebody that likes to pick up the phone,
text HOME, home, to 741-741.
to the crisis text line. And you can find them online at crisistextline.org. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and I hope that you like and follow me wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe consider leaving me a review. It always helps me to keep this podcast relevant when I know what you want to hear about. Because I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, I have to make sure at the end of each of these episodes that I give you the disclaimer that none of the material that I talk about in these podcasts is meant to replace any kind of therapy or formal medical or mental health treatment. And in fact, anything that I offer on my website, my coaching programs, any kind of psychoeducational materials that I release are not a replacement for that level of care. So just take that into account when you listen. This is information for you, and hopefully you find it of value, both as an educational tool and for your entertainment. And I also want to mention that if anyone you know is in a mental health crisis, needs additional help, I always include these two crisis resources. They're available to anybody.
pick up the phone and dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
And you can always visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Additionally, there's actually a crisis text line. So if you're not somebody that likes to pick up the phone,
text HOME, home, to 741-741.
to the crisis text line. And you can find them online at crisistextline.org. Thank you for listening to my podcast. And I hope that you like and follow me wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe consider leaving me a review. It always helps me to keep this podcast relevant when I know what you want to hear about.